Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wondered how we humans manage to understand each other so well, even when we're not saying much at all? That is a pretty wild idea, right? We're not just talking about words, but about everything we do. Think about it, sometimes the way you eat, or the way you extend your arm can send a message without a single word being spoken. But how do we know when someone is actually trying to communicate versus just doing something? This is where a fascinating concept called ostension comes in. And a recent piece of research dives deep into how we actually perceive this communicativeness, right at the very root of language itself. So ostension is basically the special communicative signal that makes a behavior more than just an ordinary action. It is the intentional part, the part that says, pay attention to me, I have something to convey. This idea has been around for a while, but understanding exactly how we pick up on it and how it shapes language is still a hot topic. And that is what this paper, by Bai et al. And commented on by Thom Scott-Phillips, really shines a light on. So the core idea here is to look at ostension not just as an act of intentional communication, but as something we actively perceive. And when we think about perception in this more active, sophisticated sense, it really changes how we understand understanding. Let's break down what they mean by perception. It is not just passively seeing or hearing. The researchers describe perception as having 5 key features: speed, automaticity, input sensitivity, informational encapsulation, and influence on other perceptual processes. Think of it like how your brain automatically recognizes a buzzing sound as a bee and instantly makes you feel a little wary. Or how your vision of a looming object makes you instinctively duck. Your brain isn't just processing raw data, it is generating expectations and influencing your next steps. Now bring that idea of perception back to ostension. The research suggests that our ability to recognize communicative intent in behavior is also a form of this sophisticated perception. It is fast, it is automatic, it is sensitive to what is happening around us, and it shapes how we interpret everything else. This is the really juicy part. Because we perceive ostension, it creates expectations. And these expectations are crucial for communication. When you perceive someone doing something in a communicative way, your brain doesn't just see an action, it expects that action to be the best possible way to convey a specific meaning. This is what is called the expectation of optimal relevance. It means we assume the communicator is trying to be as clear and efficient as possible. Think of it like a 3-legged stool. You have the ostensive behavior itself, the intended meaning, and then the expectation that the behavior is the optimal way to get that meaning across. If you only have the first leg, just the behavior, it is not enough to figure out the second part, the meaning. There are just too many possibilities. But when the perception of the behavior automatically triggers that expectation of optimal relevance, it helps us bridge that gap and infer the intended meaning. This is a really neat analogy. Comprehension is like triangulating your position using a few key points. One of those essential points is the expectation that the communication is relevant and optimally delivered. This research also helps us understand different ways of thinking about language and meaning. Some older ideas, like those from Grice, suggest that we follow certain rules of conversation, like being truthful and informative. We expect people to follow these norms because it is sensible. But then there are what are called post-Richen approaches, which this paper really leans into. These emphasize that the expectations we have are built right into the act of recognizing ostension itself. It is not just about following rules. It is about our inherent ability to pick up on communicative signals and the assumptions we make when we do. And this idea of perception generating these deeply ingrained expectations fits really well with how we understand the mind to work more broadly. To make this super clear, let's look at an example with babies. Researchers showed very young infants 2 little characters doing the same thing, making beeping sounds. One character's beeps were timed in a way that suggested they were taking turns, like in a conversation so ostensive. The other character's beeps were just random. Then one of the characters behaved as if it knew where a ball was. The babies paid less attention, meaning they weren't surprised when the character that had engaged in what looked like communicative turn taking was then seen behaving as if it had useful information about the ball. This shows that even preverbal infants interpret ostensive signals as leading to expectations of relevance. They essentially understood that the communicative exchange meant something important was being passed along. This is a powerful comparison. Just like your visual system understands the danger of a looming object, your communication system understands what ostensive behaviors mean. This inherent understanding, this perception of communicativeness, is really the foundation for all of semantics, the study of meaning and pragmatics. the study of how context influences meaning. So, what does all this mean for us? It highlights that communication isn't just about words or even just about intentions. It is a deeply perceptual process. We are constantly, often unconsciously, picking up on the subtle cues that signal this is meant for you. And here is what it is about. This ability to perceive ostension is what makes human communication so rich and flexible. It allows us to convey complex ideas, share emotions, and build relationships, not just through language, but through the very fabric of our interactions. This study really emphasizes how fundamental this perceptual ability is. It is not just adding a layer of meaning. It is providing the bedrock upon which meaning is built. It suggests that understanding this perception of ostension is key to unlocking deeper insights into how language evolves, how children acquire it, and even how we communicate with other species. And my take on this, I think it is incredibly compelling. The idea that our brains are inherently wired to perceive communicative intent as a form of sophisticated perception, not just as a logical inference, makes a lot of sense. It explains the seamlessness of much of our communication and why we can understand so much more than is explicitly stated. One strength is how it ties together findings from infant studies to adult communication, suggesting a core cognitive architecture. It also elegantly bridges theoretical debates about meaning by grounding them in perceptual processes. A potential limitation, as with many studies, is to ensure that the experimental setups truly capture the complexity of real-world ostensive behavior. While the baby study is brilliant, real-life communication involves a much wider range of signals and contexts. Future research could look at how different cultural contexts shape this perception of ostension, or explore how this perceptual ability develops and changes throughout our lives. Could we train or enhance this ability for better understanding in certain situations? What about people who struggle with social cues? And how does that relate to their perception of ostension? Overall, this research offers a truly valuable reframing of how we think about communication. It's a reminder that the seemingly simple act of understanding each other is in fact a complex and marvelous perceptual feat, happening right at the root of our minds. What do you think? Does this idea of perceiving communicativeness resonate with your own experiences? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, please give this video a like and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more insights into the fascinating world of psychology. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.